We
I'll
are
do my
live.
10 seconds. I'll call this meeting to order. May we have a moment of reflection, please? Okay. I will read the Indigenous Acknowledgement Statement again, as we do at every meeting. I would like to begin this meeting by recognizing the First Nations, the Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as the traditional stewards of the land. This municipality is located within the boundary of Treaty 18 region of 1818, which was the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and Wyandot peoples. Okay, you've all read the, oh, there's Rob. Hi, Rob.
Hello, everyone. Sorry I'm a bit late.
No problem. You all have the agenda with you that Sabrina provided. Are there any additions to that agenda that you would like to put forward? Hearing none, we'll move on. Does anyone have anything to declare in terms of pecuniary interest? Hearing nothing again, which is good. We'll move on.
Sorry, Morris, do we need to have a
Yes.
motion to approve the agenda?
My goodness, you're getting fast. I was just coming to that. Yes, may I
Sorry.
have someone move? Laurie, would you like to move?
I would
approval
love
of
to
the
move.
agenda?
Yes, so move.
A seconder, please. Joanne,
Yes.
all in favor? Can you wave your hand? I only see two hands, unfortunately, because of,
So Lori, yes, I agree.
and Joanne.
Yes.
I can't see Dorothy or Rob.
Yes, I'm voting in favor.
Thank you. That's carried. Okay, we've only a couple of little items. Moving on to item C, a couple of little items, reports for this meeting. They're listed there, and we're doing that so we don't have to go through the exercise as the items come up. May I have someone move that the board receive these reports as information to move?
Sure.
Dorothy,
Dorothy and second Dorothy. Dorothy? All in favor? All in favor? I see three hands.
everyone has their hands up, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. You can see better than me. Okay. Previous minutes of the previous meeting in February. Are there any errors or omissions or additions for that matter?
Mr. Chair, I've had a few comments that have come in, so I'm just pulling up the updated minutes. Hopefully you can see that on your screen now. There were some typos that have been cleaned up. There were also some larger agendas, items that were resolutions that were in there that have now been moved around. So I'm just moving to this section. When we move into the F2.1, which is the fourth page of the minutes, there are 25, 26, and 27 have been cleaned up with just some little typos, and there was a double that the board in one of them, so that has been cleaned up there. And additionally, there were just some small typos that were in the actual text. So we have cleaned all of those pieces up now.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. Again, my question, are there any errors, any other errors or omissions of those minutes? May I have someone move the adoption of the minutes of the February the 18th meeting as amended?
I see
Rob,
Joanne.
Moved by Rob, seconder.
Joanne has her hand up.
Thank you, Joanne. That's okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on in item D. These are notes, well, from Sabrina. I'll let you speak to those, Sabrina, just so that people are aware of exactly why, et cetera, et cetera. Item D 2.1, the April meeting.
So this was just a note that the actual minutes said it would be March or April. So we have opted to move forward with the meeting happening in April. This will cancel our regular scheduled meeting and we'll move it to a special meeting for April. So that is what's on there. This will again be a closed meeting under the Municipal Act as well as under the Libraries Act about identifiable people. So that will not be recorded and not be put up on Facebook or YouTube. And
Thank
then
you.
D2.2,
Yeah,
just an
go ahead.
update on that. So we have scheduled our quarterly meetings for the meetings with the mayor, the deputy mayor, and the CAO, which will be meeting with the chair, the vice chair, and myself. Our first meeting is in April, so we'll be most likely only having 3 in this year, only because that first quarter we're kind of at the end of right now.
Okay. Any questions of Sabrina on those points that are discussed or raised or explained? Sabrina, will we have an agenda per se? Will you publish an agenda for the April the closed meeting?
Yes, so it'll be a closed one, so it'll just go to the board, but we will have an agenda for
Okay. And we have a meeting. We have our first meeting in April. This April or something or other. Laurie and Sabrina and I meeting with Rob and the mayor and Sean Everett. Fortunately, they were only able to allow us 1 hour. So it'll be fun to see what happens in that first meeting. Now, is there someone who would like to move that we accept the discussions and et cetera as explained, accept that as information on the business arising from the minutes? A mover? Laurie, and someone to second? Dorothy? All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. I don't believe we have any deputations.
We do not. There is no correspondence.
No correspondence. Thank you very much. That moves the agenda on pretty fast. Okay, moving on to item F, and this is the nuts and bolts really of our meeting. The first thing is the action plan update, the report number 21.08. Sabrina, that's your bailiwick. Can you take us through that particular report?
Certainly. Like usual, we have our general background statement that's on here that says that we have 82 achievable outcomes for the year and when it was originally approved. Section C would be where you'll see the various things that we have achieved. So at this point, we have cleanly completed 18.3%. And there is another 7.3% which are ongoing, which they'll never truly be achieved. It's like doing the monthly board release of the key messages that once we've started them, we're continuing on. So we are well on our way, having 25.6%, and we're only coming into the first quarter. So we're right on target of where we should be. Additionally, we have some statistics that we can look through. On C.1, 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3, you can see some of the numbers that we've added on, instead of it just being that it's not complete, that you can see where we are on our grand targets. 1,500 e-newsletter subscribers is our goal for the year. We are currently just shy of 1,300, so again, well on our way. Our Twitter number for all of the GLAM, so library and museum, is at 658, so we're very close to achieving that. And our Facebook followers, again, very close to achieving that, just shy of 1,400. And you'll note that the Instagram, we've actually surpassed that number. So that was something that we started just recently at the end of 2020, and we're currently at 350. We will not be stopping trying to build that campaign of social media followers, but we have achieved that target.
Tell me
Other
something.
than that, if there's
Sabrina.
questions that you have, I'll just leave you to view the report and see if there's anything you wanted to know.
I just wanted to ask you, how is that campaign conducted? Just on a ad hoc by the staff basis?
So we do promote our social media. When people sign up for a new card, we try to give them the information that we're out there. And mostly the best way to recruit for these is, of course, to have good content on your site that people want to go there. And then the e-newsletter, as well as all of our blogs that we have when we have anyone call in to the library for help with a hold or needing to renew a their library card, we ask if this is something that they would like to do. So we cannot sign them up without their knowledge. Being a library user does get you the e-newsletter, but the rest of the blogs, that's something that people would need to request. So that is how we build our numbers.
Good, thank you. Oh, yes, you got something else you want to add?
Unless there's questions about the rest of the document on where we are, I can certainly respond to any questions.
Any questions for Sabrina? Okay, thank you. We'll move on then. This is discussion on town hall style meetings. Virtually, probably will be virtually for sure. Spring and fall. Now, Sabrina posed that question, and I'll read it. Do the board members have any agenda items for the spring for this meeting, or should we hold off for a summer meeting? Let's talk about that. Any suggestions, comments, thoughts, etc.? Yes, Joanne.
I would prefer it to go to the summer. Unless there are many pressing pieces of information from the other board members, I think I'd like it streamlined.
First of all, I'll come back to that. I'm not losing sight of that, Joanne, but exactly what would the format be for a town hall style meeting? It like this, a virtual meeting like this with all of the board members like this, and then any participants from the community signing up as well. Is that the idea, Sabrina?
I would anticipate it would be similar to what we did last year using Facebook Live. We certainly could do it as a actually registering members that wanted to ask questions. So it's not a typing question, but it's face-to-face. That's something that we could discuss as well.
Yes, you reminded me. It was you and Laurie that we sort of put on the hot seat, and you made a great presentation. Is it that type of one again you're thinking of? You and Laurie perhaps thinking of?
It could be the same format. It could also be, again, maybe two members of myself and one other member of the board, but that we allow registration so members of the public could face-to-face ask questions.
Yeah, coming back to what you were saying, Joanne, have it in the summertime. Now my question, and this has been sort of in my mind when I first read these notes. What would we tell them? What would we tell the community that we're not already telling them, if you understand? Yeah, Joanne?
Well, that was my idea of moving it to the summer to streamline it. As we are broadcasting our monthly meetings already, and while we get participants or viewers, hello, Morris, we are not getting correspondence or deputations. So that's leading me to think that there are not, unless I'm misreading the situation, there are not a tremendous amount of questions that our population is burning to ask.
That was the thought in my mind. Does anyone else have any comments to make? Rob?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Having the year in review and the audit ready would provide a good topic to build it around. And if people are going to join in, that's what's going to draw them in. But to have it just to have it and not have, you know, enough people attend doesn't really make it worthwhile. But I think when those two things are available, it gives you something to talk about. And I think the format that was used last time worked very well. But having people able to ask questions themselves would be a good addition.
Yeah, I'd go along with that, except I'd point out that if you were to emphasize the year in review and an audit or an audited report, that's stuff that will be at least 6 months old. And you know, we're kind of past that right now, wouldn't you agree?
The audit we won't receive until probably July or June. So it would be just when the audit is coming out.
Yeah. Yeah, we've really the audit's done by the town auditors, etc. We've never really had any problems with that. Anyone else got any thoughts on, well, as Joanne says, is there a necessity for a summer meeting? Is there anything we have to say? We're not having any complaints that I'm aware of. Yeah, Lori?
I do think it's a good idea to maintain sort of proactive communications with the community. We did have options for questions the last two town halls, but I do think the format of Zoom does create some barriers to asking questions. So it'll be nice when we can do these things in person again, but in the meantime, I think it's important to be out there with information and provide the opportunity for questions, even if there isn't a lot of questions being asked. And I think, you know, the annual report would be a good basis on which to have a session, whatever timing that is. Sabrina, you'll be able to tell us in terms of the actual timing, the availability of the report, but do it sort of around that would make sense. I also wondered, in terms of timing, is there an opportunity to talk about our strategic planning process and how we're planning on soliciting community input? And we don't think we've had that discussion yet about how we're going to proceed, but that would be a good way of introducing our planning process and getting people to consider their involvement.
If I may just, Rob, hang on a second. It seems to me, and I'm going back a little ways here, maybe for different reasons, but when we sort of discussed not so much strategic plans, because the board always made those, but we had a time when we were saying, well, saying to the community, well, what do you want? And all we got was about 5% of what they wanted and 95% complaints, because we opened the door at that time. I'm not worried about that right now. We've nothing to well, nothing really to talk about. We're not hearing any complaints. Certainly, Sabrina, there are the day-to-day things that I'm not downplaying them, but I'm not hearing anything. Let's put it that way. And if you had heard any serious stuff, you would have passed it on.
The community consultation that we did for the previous strategic plan, so the 2018 to 2022, we did have a lot of community input. And actually it was the community input that framed the 4 goals and the 19 objectives on those goals. So I think that that will be a key piece. That's one of the things we have set to start that consultation in the fall. So certainly if it's a spring or summer, we could be adding that into the agenda of how would you like us to reach out, especially in a time of COVID. And in the fall, that could be kicking off that point of how are we doing our community consultation. And then that will bring us into the winter of 21 that we'll be doing the actual consultation. Hopefully, I'm sorry, winter of 22. Hopefully when more people have been vaccinated and there's a little bit more opportunity for doing face-to-face.
Okay, thank you. I am deliberately being a little bit of a devil's advocate. Rob, you had something that you wanted to say?
Yeah, and I agree with you. If you do just open the door, you get that. Was exactly what you described, Morris. So I think you have to try to provide the focus and ask the questions and get the audience to answer them. And we also, I think we'd have a lot more information about the post-COVID world as it pertains to the library and the depot. And have some information there, which I think everybody will really be interested in. And Sabrina knows probably better than anyone when we will have that kind of information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Dorothy, I haven't heard from you. Any comments?
No, well,
thoughts?
to the initial question, I pretty clearly nobody's interested in having it in the spring, and I do like the idea of having it in the summer to maintain the profile of the library, particularly when we're trying to be part of the town's strategic planning in terms of the leisure study where we weren't mentioned. I think we have to be actively working to keep ourselves at the forefront of the cultural piece of that planning.
Mm-hmm.
Tread
Okay.
carefully.
Gary?
Agree, Mr. Chair, with what's been said. I think summer makes sense. I think it's a great opportunity to inform the public. They will be looking forward to, post-COVID library. And I agree with Rob's point too, that we need to set the agenda and informing, and two, we're also asking questions. But I think it makes good sense to do it.
Okay. And finally, Jesse, how about you?
I agree with what Gary just said. I think that most people today are focusing on things other than the library. One hopes that by summer, the focus of the population at large will be more in terms of a normal life.
So if I'm hearing people properly, number one, I guess the first question is maybe, will we have a meeting? And I think I'm hearing the answer, yes, we will have a meeting. When will we have the meeting? I sort of sense that you're saying summer, but then I'm hearing that, I'm also sensing that it might be worthwhile waiting until, shall we say, August or September sometime, when we will have an audited financial report, and let's assume it's okay. We can blow our own horn, et cetera, et cetera. We did the right things. And at that time, we will know more about the COVID-19 situation. I suspect we'll still be virtual, but is that a fair summation that we will have a meeting? Would you all agree? Can we go consensus that it may not be in June, July, more like August, September? Would that be a fair assumption?
I
Mr.
agree.
Chair, when I have a date for the audit and we'll have our annual report done months before that, I can bring that forward and we could let that frame when it would be. So we don't have to select a month. We just know it's based on when our audit is actually available.
Okay, that brings up a question. Does everyone want it to have a summer meeting which will include an audited financial statement for the year 20, whatever last year was? Lori?
Well, certainly, I was thinking to do with the annual report, and the audited statement's usually part of that, if not actually in the printed version. So yeah, something that's framed around the annual report, the audit, and probably running sometime in the summer when those are available would make sense. And we also, in our action plan, talk about a fall town hall as well. So I think it makes a little bit more sense to have it earlier, as soon as we can, following the annual report, since that would be the focus of it.
The annual report, but maybe not an audited report. There's a difference.
We do usually focus more on the annual report, which is our information about
Yes.
statistics, and less about the numbers because the numbers are available. Honestly, most people don't read an audit because it's a different type of document, but we do always publish our annual report as well.
Mhm, mhm. Okay, well, I can understand, do we have one in, I'll pick a time, June, and another one in the fall? Is that what people want us to do? Do I see people nodding their head? 2 meetings.
Seems reasonable to me.
I beg your pardon, Jesse?
I said it seems reasonable to me.
Okay, we'll have 2 meetings, and
That is what we have in our action plan as well.
yeah, okay, all right, so we'll go ahead with that. Okay, if we can move on to 2.2, F 2.2. You're going to give us the YouTube and Facebook statistics, Serena?
Yes, so just an update. I try to give these numbers as of the morning of the board meeting, just so you know where we are. For February, we had slightly down numbers of our Facebook. We had 98. We had 116 before in January, but our YouTube has more than doubled. So our YouTube views are 55, where in the past we've been between 13 and 20. So our YouTube is definitely a place where it's easier to find after the fact than going and drilling through Facebook. So the Facebook users tend to be those that are watching at the time or just shortly thereafter, and YouTube tends to be the people who want to watch it sometime during the month. So numbers are going up, something to keep in mind, that we do have people who are looking to see what's happening. Not everyone is watching all the way through, of course. It is a long meeting for most people, but that is 55 unique viewers that are paying attention to how we're doing things. Beyond that, one other stat that may be of interest. Yesterday, we released our most recent service update, which is a web page that we have anytime there's sort of a press release of information. And yesterday's had to do with how we are assisting people who need to register for the vaccination. We do put out a social media post announcing that we've done that as well, so it doesn't get missed. And yesterday alone, since we put up that social media post, 20 people came and read the social media post, directed them directly to our website, which means at least 20 people now know that we are offering assistance on registering for the vaccination and printing for the vaccination as well.
Great.
Yeah, where are we now? Are we moving on to F3? All right.
Can I just say that I think that's really commendable, that you're stepping into a situation where clearly, it's a huge help for people and bridging a gap in terms of assistance with COVID, and very, very timely and thoughtful. That's good. It's great.
Thank you. We've had, I sit on the community task force, the recovery task force with the town. And one of the things that we heard at the previous meeting was that there were seniors who had been called up for their vaccination and they needed to print a document. And many people don't have printers at home anymore. You may have a smartphone where you could register, but no way to print the document needed. So we jumped in to figure out what we could do. We then found out there were others who were having problems getting through the phone system. So now if you call us, we will actually be your data entry and do the data entry on the computer system for you while you're on the phone telling us what to put in. So we're not actually registering you for the vaccination, you're doing it, we're just being your computer and fingers. And that way you don't have to stay on a phone call for hours in some cases, it's done in a matter of minutes.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah, if I can add, I had mine done on Monday, and the form is the big sticking point. The rest of it's really easy, but the form is the hard part, and it takes a few minutes to go through it. So that would be the biggest help to a lot of people.
Yeah, well done.
Anybody else have theirs?
Yes.
Yep,
Yep.
Yep.
good.
In fact, I got my
Actually,
second one booked already.
well, that's
Congratulations.
automatic. Actually, we booked and we were offered an appointment in Penatang, which I took for two of us. It was a Saturday. I figured it was a nice drive over to Penatang. It's not that far. And then I subsequently went back and changed it and automatically canceled the Penatang and got next Wednesday in Collingwood. So it's a very, even for us old folks, it's not bad, you know. Okay, enough of the enough of the common stuff. Sabrina, moving on. What does an outreach discussion mean?
So I just wanted to prepare something that I would like to start looking at for the 2022 budget. And I know we've just been passed for the 21 budget, but early on when I came here in 2017, one of the things that I realized is that there is one manager position that has two very large tasks. It is the manager of public services and the manager of community outreach. Most libraries of our size and of the caliber of work that we do would have both of those as two different positions. And what happens when you try to make one person do that is you really focus on one area and the other area kind of slacks off because you just can't put in the time to it. So something that I think that this board needs to be aware of is that for the 2022 budget, I would like to be looking to have a second position that would be dealing with community outreach. Community outreach has to do with our partnerships. It has to do with our ability to fundraise. It has to do with our ability to capital plan. It really is about us not being a party of our own as an island and trying to work with our community and trying to find out what our community needs and then to raise the dollars to do that. So that is a position that I just wanted you to be aware of. Later in our agenda, I do actually have our manager who is doing outreach that will talk a bit about what outreach looks like in the time of COVID. And some of the things that she is working on, not necessarily what this position would be doing, but what the current position is looking at, which is just the tip of the iceberg of what an outreach staffer would normally do. So I'm sure that as we're moving along throughout our budget planning in the spring and into summer, this will be coming up again, but I just wanted you to know early on that this is something that I'll be working on, in part because the town is going to be going into their next salary study. And that has to be done by May, which would include all job descriptions have to be completed in order for it to go out to whoever the winning company is. And that would mean that we don't get to talk about this in September. I need to have all of my planning work done on this before May 1st, which is why it feels very early in the year to be doing it, but there is a reason why.
Just for my benefit, but maybe for everyone, And I don't want to prolong the discussion at this point because it's not quite ready yet. But it does affect, we as board members are affected because we would have to approve what I assume would be an increase in the budget.
It would be an addition onto the budget,
In
yes.
addition under the budget, yeah. Now, and I understand from your notes to me that, you know, we have to look ahead to 2020 for next year, because if we don't get the work done into now, it'll be a whole year delay before we could do this. And I just want to be very sure that it's really only it will eventually only be a budget approval of a budget item, because we do not step into your shoes as to how the library is organized. Isn't that correct?
Correct. The budget is where you would be approving the budget to be released to council.
How you
that's
do
where
it,
right.
how you do it, or how you get the work done. That's a different subject, shall we
Yes.
say? Okay. Does everyone understand what I'm driving at there? That it will only be a budget item we're really looking at, but you're going to explain to us so we have some idea going into those discussions of why it's required.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions, any thoughts, any of what Sabrina and I have been saying? No? Moving on. Well, this is the long one, isn't it, Sabrina?
It's long on paper, but it'll only take a moment to go through this one.
Okay.
So this item is just a notice that at the May meeting, we should be approving either the review or amendments to our policies. The list that is on, and let me actually pull this up, sorry. The list that is here So the list that is on here of the various policies are those that are, the first group are our annual policies, which have to do with health and safety and AODA. We are required by legislation to review those annually. And then we also have a number that happen in our third year, which would be our values, our mission, and our vision statements. So the reason why I have these here is so that you know that it's coming, especially because it would normally come out the month before, but our April meeting will not be a standard board meeting. It'll be a topical special meeting, so this won't be in your notice for that meeting. So we're going a bit ahead of time just to give this notice. I don't expect any questions now. I have included them in the package. I've also have very minor edits on a few of them, and I've noted which ones they are. Most of them are housekeeping or just a phrase here or there that would help. For example, in respectful workplaces, we talk about sexual harassment based on gender, but actually never referred to somebody who is transgendered, which may or may not be considered when a person is reading it. So we tried to make sure that it's not just based on sex, it's based on all gender. So little things like that that are in there, but really make a difference in making it a quality policy. And then on our mission and vision statement, again, very minor little comments I put in on what my recommendations would be, but that is not the finished document. That's just so when you're reading it, you know what I would be recommending, and certainly other things that you find will bring back. So my hope is that the board will have all of these comments back to me by April 23rd. And at that point, then I will be able to bring them all together into one package and include it in our May board meeting. So everyone should be taking a look between now and then, which is ample time, and we will move forward at the May meeting as scheduled.
Good, thank you. Yeah, I understood
The
that.
third part that's on there, Mr. Chair, is the notice of the public hearing. We don't have any documentation that we need to do at this point. The town of Blue Mountains has been working on their code of conduct for some time. We actually are not part of the code of conduct. I'm sorry, I'll stop sharing now. We are not part of their code of conduct, although we are a local board. Because we have the Public Libraries Act, that means it pulls us out of any documentation where we would be referred to as a local board. But at the same point, we do try to make sure we're always on side with documentation like this. So I've just attached the link and recommended any board members to take a look at it. And certainly if there's any opinion that the board wishes to have a note or a deputation or a letter submitted for that public hearing, we can do that. Otherwise, it's really just a case of information, knowing that when it is finalized, assuming sometime in May or June, we'll bring it back and see if our code of conduct does need any other changes. So like I said, it took a whole page on the agenda, but it wasn't long.
No, that was good, yeah. Rob, do you have any comments you want to make about your?
Yeah, there aren't a lot of changes. This is a review we do every year. It's the mayor and I and one other councillor, along with the human resources director. And we didn't make very many changes. We just updated it a year or so before that. So mostly we just tweaked the definitions this time around. And I think we've tweaked the diagram that shows you how to process for complaints. But the harassment and discrimination definitions are always difficult, and we're always playing with those because every time somebody new looks at it, they see something that should be changed. And the transgender part will probably need some attention. Although we talk about sexual orientation, so it may need to be said straight out, but we will be reviewing it again. And this is kind of months old in my mind because we did this quite a while ago, but there isn't a whole lot that's different. And I don't know if there's anything that really applies specifically to the library board that would be of great interest. Maybe Sabrina has caught something, but I don't remember anything in particular.
I've reviewed it, and although it does not specifically speak to us, I always look to make sure that our code and the town's code are in alignment, and that there's no place that we feel that we're offside from each other. And there's no changes to this document that I think need to be reflected in ours.
Good, thank you. And I looked at our own vertical. I keep losing things. Our own policy about code of conduct, and as it piggybacks, and it doesn't piggyback, but it reflects the town code of conduct, and we'll discuss that at a later date. Okay, if I may move on, Sabrina, I think we're good to go to about F5 at this point.
Yes.
What? Oh yeah, that's you again, isn't it?
So again, the report is here, our administrative report. So we do start again with some statistics. The notes will probably stay in just for clarity if a person was to read it for the first time. We don't want them to question what we mean by areas. So our active card holders do continue to increase. Our circulation is a bit lower than it usually would be. Everybody's circulation across the provinces with COVID. Some because of curbside pickup, and others because people are just concerned about leaving their homes for any reason. So circulation, we do anticipate will stay a bit lower this year than typical. Our digital circulation is up, but it's not up to the point of making up the full difference in circulation. Where we do see the tremendous gains is in our programming, and that is mostly because of our virtual end. But you can see that we have great growths also in our Biblio board, which is our online museum exhibits, our technical programs, You know, typically we do technical programs monthly, and we may have about 15 people present face to face, maybe 30 if we do multiple programs. And you can see that since the beginning of the year, we're over 1,000 with 662 people just in the month of February. So this does not include March, because this would be the previous month. So 1,000 in 2 months, 662 in the month of February. So we are making great impacts, I believe, in our community, even if we are not having that face-to-face, one-on-one contact. We're all looking forward to having that one-on-one contact, but I personally believe, as well as many of the staff, that we're going to have to find a new service model when COVID is done, assuming there's ever a point where we're not dealing with the types of restrictions of distance and masking. Just because our community has taken to the virtual aspects that we've done so well, it's gonna be very difficult to pull back and say, no, you only get that technical program if you show up on Wednesday between 12 and 1 p.m. People who weren't able to do programs with us in the past are now enjoying it in this new format. And we don't have the production value to do the face-to-face and record it at the same time. So I think that we will be, I know actually, that our staff will be looking, as we're coming up with our 22 plans for our budget, for our how we're spending the budget in community services, to find what is that happy medium between the face-to-face that people long for, but that maintaining of an aspect of virtual, so that we continue to hit such great strides in our community. And it's not just us, it is a provincial phenomena that we're all going to have to work with, but we are definitely, we were the #1 programming attendance in the province in 2019, which tells us that when we were doing face-to-face, we had great numbers. And I anticipate we are probably still up there when it looks at the virtual. So how are we going to do this? We'll soon be figuring out. Outside of that, we do have our first returning exhibit to the gallery that will be starting in the month of April. It actually starts on the 29th. We are anticipating, hoping that there will be an opportunity to be open physically to the public. We do see that our health unit has really good numbers, but we also see that a third wave is here and approaching. And one of the hot spots for the UK variant we know is our neighbor health unit, which we do know eventually will impact us. So we don't want to jump the gun and make a decision for opening that becomes an unsafe matter for our community. But we do hope that we will be able to have people back in the building and be able to physically see our art exhibits, which come back into the gallery starting in April. They will still be continuing online. We've taken a lot of effort to make sure that every art exhibit is available from a virtual gallery, but we know that it's not the same when you want to see art, especially if you want to purchase art. And our mandate is not only to bring art to the community, but to support our local artists who are trying to become known and sell. So that's why it's a huge part of what we do, having people walk through our gallery with local artists' information and materials up there. We have some areas from our library services that are happening both here and at Ellie Shore. And I won't go through all of them, but the staff have been putting pieces in here on what they're very proud to share. Our digital arts equipment and our arts loan is still going, and we can't keep it on site. It's just traveling greatly. That was through a grant that came in, through support through the town, and of course our partner through the Creator Space. So we're really excited to see that these things are still moving even during the pandemic. And when people are able to come back on site, we will be having more workshops and training on that. We have a number of series that are coming up, and it's a new series on health and wellness that's happening over the next few months. So our first one coming up is at the end of March, and we'll have one each month. So I certainly hope that people who are not tired of Zoom meetings will have interesting ways of doing things and joining us. And the first one, Connecting with Nature, is going to be kind of a different Zoom, because while you are actually attending it through a virtual meeting, you're not attending it in your home. You have to be outside. So you're going to be doing forest bathing. I'll just leave it at that. You have to register and find out more information if you want. But really trying to connect people in ways that are not just sitting at a computer. So while most of our things are virtual, starting to look outside now that we have the weather and the opportunities for people to do things. So hopefully we'll continue to grow new materials. Our museum also has been extremely busy. We have, you know, that we launched our 2 new films in February. We have now split the launch that was up there, which was a great video of about an hour with the full launch, into the 2 shorter films. So you can just go in and watch the films without all of the interviews and the other interesting pieces on there. And if you know of anybody that has any photographs of things that happened during COVID, we are creating a new exhibit that's called Staying Home Stories. So images of you, your family, your house, your neighbor down the street who put a sign up. We have our Leonard E. Shore bust, which is the statue that we have at the entrance of Ellie Shore, and he is wearing his mask and he has his face shield on. So of course he is part of our Staying at Home Stories, but it is going to be a video, a curated video and curated photographs that have to do with things that tell the story for generations to come of how our pandemic of the century was handled locally in our community. So no images will be turned away. We're looking for people to send those over to the depot, and they will be looking at how that fits into the curated bit. There's also some other really interesting things on History Pin that are coming, which is a way that you can look at the historic images with the current buildings that are present, or lots or locations. So lots of really exciting things that we've been able to move forward on. And as you can see, our Biblio board is continuing to be used throughout the month and continues to grow. And those are all of our virtual exhibits, and we keep adding to them as we go. Staffing, I wanted to spend a minute on and really focus on the fact that we have 2 new positions. Alessia Ferris is one of our good news stories. She has been with the depot actually since before the depot was part of the Blue Mountains Public Library. She started as a summer student. She continued on doing summer students and internships and Young Canada Works. Actually, after working at the museum, she fell in love with museum studies and did her museum program. She has worked for the museum, and when there were no jobs at the museum and we had some internship money, we brought her into the library, and she worked at Ellie Shore for the past year. We recently had a resignation from somebody who has moved out of the area and is starting her family. So we wish Allison great luck on her coming little baby. But that opened up the opportunity for Alessia to actually, after 5 years, be hired as an actual staff member, as a permanent staff. We certainly wish we didn't have to drag people along for 5 years to get to the point where there's a position for them, but it really is one of those good news stories when you groom a young worker and all of a sudden you find that they're one of your key people in your facility. So really exciting news for Alessia being with us. The second one I wanted to point out, and I'm going to ask Dorothy to possibly give some information on this as well. We had a communication assistant, a library assistant with communication specialist that was posted, and my daughter actually was one of the people who applied. So at that point, I walked away from any aspect of the search and turned it over to our 2 managers and asked a member of the board to sit on this committee. Normally, as Morris has pointed out earlier, operations are under the purview of the CEO, but for full and complete transparency, I did not want to be involved if she was hired, and I certainly didn't want to be involved if she wasn't hired from a family side. So at that point, the manager to which this position would be applying, which is the manager of public services and community outreach, took over the lead. And we went to the board and put it to two people on the board who have done similar types of work on HR ends, and Dorothy agreed to sit on the committee. So like I said, I've had nothing to do with any of the search, but maybe Dorothy, if you wouldn't mind, just for transparency, so the board is well aware of how that search was conducted.
Oh, no, absolutely happy to. And I would just like to say from the outset what a pleasure it was for me to work with Mary Dodge and Elisa Chandler. You know, in your role as a trustee, you generally don't get to meet a lot of the staff. And for me, it was just interesting and fun. And I was really impressed by their professionalism. So in terms of the process, from my background, and you all know I was a superintendent of HR, the process was very well run. It was, position was well advertised. There was a quite surprisingly large number of applicants. So in terms of process, the three of us each went through the applicant pool, whittled it down to a manageable number, and then had further discussions on whom of those applicants best met the posted qualifications. We then interviewed, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but we went through a full day of interviews. I think we had scheduled 8 or 9, one withdrew. So we ended up interviewing, as I said, I don't remember, it was 6 or 7 anyway. And we had 2 or 3 strong candidates, and based on their scoring in the interview, their references, and the overall fit for a library, we landed on Hannah very happily. She did a lovely interview, and I know her past experience with the library board speaks for itself. So again, I have every confidence that it was well run, and was happy to be part of it.
So the board knows. Thank you very much, Dorothy, for sharing that. I know that I didn't ask you to do that earlier. So that was just sort of thrown on you to pop in on that bit. Just so you know, some of the experience that she does bring, which I think will really play into some of the board's needs. Volunteering and working in libraries since grade 6. So about 10 years of volunteering and working in the library for a number of years, and actually being here at the Blue Mountains as a co-op for her program that she was just graduating in since last March. So she had done just about 1 year. Now she is 1 year. In addition to that, she has worked in film and productions, having to do with radio and film from the communication end. So all of our videos that have been being edited over the past year, which has really been a big piece of why we've been so successful with our virtual programming, is because of that filming and then turning around and doing the editing work to make a quality product that doesn't look like someone who's just snapped it off with, you know, a quick phone. So she has brought that to us. She also will be working directly with the board, having to do with a lot of the strategic planning pieces. So that communication need that the board is going to have on developing how to communicate, and then putting out the social media and the advertising and the newsletters and pieces like that, that will be something that board members will be working directly with this position on that bit. You'll also notice that our newsletter has changed since she's been with us, and it is a very different looking newsletter, much more graphical and less text, which, you know, those of us that were quickly trying to do communication in the past would write an article and pop it in, and now it has a much more graphical flow, which is nicer to look at when you have someone who can focus on these types of things. So unless there are questions about that process or anything having to do with that, certainly I can answer questions, or Dorothy.
There you are. Any questions of Dorothy or Sabrina? Okay. Where are we now, Sabrina? Are we at 5.2 or what?
Yes.
We are? All right. Again, I throw it back to you. Hi, Mary.
Hello, Chairman Parker. How are you today?
I'm good. Good. You can call me Morris.
Good.
Everyone else does.
Okay, thank you. I'd
Okay,
like
what
to
do you want
thank
to say?
you and the members of the board for letting me do a little presentation for you today. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right. So today, I'd like to share with you how outreach has evolved through the challenges faced with the COVID-19 pandemic, and how we will be building on our previous successes while incorporating new learnings as we prepare to conduct outreach through the next stages of the pandemic and even beyond. COVID-19 has drastically changed societal ways of doing things. Socializing is now mainly done at a great distance with technology. Outreach librarianship has traditionally relied upon person-to-person connections with the community. And these two things may seem like trying to mix oil and vinegar right now, but by using creative problem solving and innovation, it can be overcome, as there is still a really great need for outreach. Outreach librarianship is the connection between the goals of the community and the goals of the library. Outreach helps to bridge divides in access and merges multiple perspectives into a unified vision and goal. Its engaging methods ensure greater opportunity for the library and for the community. Successful outreach connects with all of the community. Outreach connects with demographics like families, teens, and seniors. It connects with all library user types, especially those who may not have a library card. It also connects with a variety of community sectors and people who are historically underserved. In 2019 and previously, outreach services generally committed to connecting with folks in downtown areas and in being part of larger community events. There, we would be able to meet a variety of community members and share with them and businesses what's happening at the library and encouraging them to come visit us. In 2020, stopping the spread made walking in downtown and chatting with folks near impossible, and community events were canceled throughout the entire year. So we really relied on social listening, absorbing any feedback we could hear about people's experiences and needs. We then changed the way we connected with people, and we used phones, email, social media, and video conferencing to make connections. In 2021, we want to continue to have meaningful connections while incorporating new methodologies such as Hardwood Institute for Public Innovation and use community-led approaches. Outreach in 2020 ran into many barriers. We relied heavily on the relationships that had been previously established, and in return, purchased prizes for the community from these organizations and businesses and connected with them for programs. Despite a pandemic, our efforts were creating a win-win-win situation. 2020 had us reflecting and reevaluating what successful outreach looks like, and that it's all about seeking win-win-win results. Remembering that relationships need time to develop strong connections, which leads to partnerships, which leads to breaking down barriers, and leads to support. Building relationships means outreach librarians can identify and hear community needs and consult with them, Partnerships will be fostered as we collaborate and share resources with a united vision, enabling barriers to be removed. Word of mouth stories will be shared, and advocates will help champion for greater opportunities. Establishing and maintaining meaningful connections takes time because it often looks like hanging out. But outreach librarians utilize empathetic and active listening skills, and they are curious to hear other stories. They do not bring an agenda to the connection, but rather building the relationship is the priority. Partnerships are an essential outcome of outreach. Partnerships develop because parties and stakeholders have a shared vision. It may be encouraging youth, preventing isolation in seniors, or supporting local businesses. Partnerships require strong relationships where all parties bring a variety of resources needed to accomplish the shared vision. Partnerships know that together they can accomplish greater things than they would be able to on their own. Our community needs a constant connection with outreach that ensures their needs and goals are addressed. This need means there's great opportunity to go all in, encouraging library champions, pay it forward fundraising, supporting community success and thriving businesses, and contributing to local development. A thriving community is the goal of outreach. It's the goal of the community, and it's the goal of the library because we are there for that. I hope this has helped to show the evolution we've experienced in our outreach efforts over the last year in the pandemic, how we envision outreach happening throughout the remaining of the pandemic and beyond, and how essential it is not only to the library, but also to the community.
Thank you, Mary.
I am happy to answer any questions that you may have around outreach.
That's my job. Does anyone have any questions of Mary?
I have a couple.
Laurie.
Yeah. You mentioned the Hardwood Institute, and that's something I did some of the ULA sessions on that, and it came up a couple of times. Can you talk to us a little bit about that and how you think you might be using it?
Yeah, absolutely. The Hardwood Institute is something that a lot of Ontario libraries focus on for their community and outreach librarianship methods. It is connected with ALA, so the American Library Association, and it is becoming the norm. So the Hardwood Institute has expertise in how you connect with community members, how you facilitate focus groups, and the different areas and cross sectors you can connect with to provide feedback and ensure there's a constant relationship and communication loop with the community. And it really helps also with strategic planning. I've personally recently signed up for training with the Hardwood Institute, and I'll be doing that throughout April this year.
And actually, that was my second question, is how does this relate to strategic planning? Because that's something we'll be looking at as a board before too long.
I do think that this position is going to take a really strong role in 22 as we're looking at outreach for the strategic planning piece, as we're in that consultation phase. If we remember correctly, one of the key negative responses that we received following the 2018 consultation and the approval of the 2018-2022 strat plan is there were members of the community who said they didn't know. They didn't know we were doing communication. They didn't know we were doing consultation. They didn't know there was a strategic plan. And with what we had in front of us, we thought we had hit that. We put in advertisements in our local newspapers. We were using social media. We were on the town's e-blasts. And obviously, these main forms of communication, which the town depends on, weren't enough to hit some of the community members that we need to. So our outreach staff are going to be, I think, quite involved with the strategic planning process in the fall of this year in 21 and into 2022. And then hopefully Mary will be able to bring more information when she finishes the Hardwood Institute's program on how we can use that to the table as the board starts planning how we're going to be moving forward.
Great.
Any other questions? My goodness, you made a good impression. You challenged all of us. Thank you, Mary.
Mr. Chair, I do believe that you will be
yes.
seeing more of Mary as we proceed through the next year, trying to keep this, the strategic planning piece alone is key to the board, and making sure that we don't miss community members and we don't have the same outcome that we had last year with a great plan, but a few people who have very loud voices who did not feel that they were engaged. So we have to make sure that we have everyone engaged.
So I will have two of you to rely on then, eh? Through the meetings. You wouldn't believe, Mary, how hard it is, you know. I need someone. Anyhow, let's move on. I need someone to move that this board receive the strategic plan discussions as information, and also receive the very excellent presentation on outreach from Mary Dodge. Someone to move?
Also move.
Gary, a seconder? Joanne? All in favor? Please put your hand up. Thank you. Carried. Thank you, Mary and Sabrina. Sabrina or Mary, you're welcome to sit and listen to the rest of us if you wish. No problem to us. We have no other business as far as I'm concerned. Round table. Tell me about this, Sabrina. I think you
So the
mentioned
round
that
table,
some of it.
again, we have listed the pieces that you may be interested in knowing are coming up from program end. I would like to focus on the Imagination Studio being one of them. The Imagination Studio is going to be our March show, and that is supporting one of our local partners who has a fantastic studio for artwork and really specializes in working with young children. Obviously, it has been a very difficult time for her and every local business owner who has been trying to do work, and she will be having a gallery full of artwork from her young students, all of which will be for sale. And the ACC is not charging a commission on the show. Normally we take 25% to be able to support the young artists and to support her studio. And then the other one that I wanted to focus on is the free tax clinic. And that actually is Mary as well, as on the other side of the coin, which is the manager of public services. She has developed a program where she is working with CRA, has the certified volunteers through CRA. So anybody who has a simple tax return, so it can't be anything that has too many more difficult pieces, the typical tax return, it is offered free of charge here at the library, at Blue Mountains Public Library. They can apply, they drop off their information, and the volunteers are the ones who take it and will help them complete their tax return so it's quickly filed, and are well aware of everything that has to do with COVID this year. So if you or someone you know might be interested in that, you can visit our events page and get more information on it. But that is, again, a new program that's being offered this year, and something that I think many, many community members would be able to access and stretch the dollars if you don't have to pay for someone else to do it.
Thank you, Sabrina. Anyone else got anything to add to this roundtable discussion? Well, okay. Can I have someone move, please, that this board receives information, the roundtable discussions as presented?
I will.
Dorothy moves. The second, Rob. Jesse, all in favor? Carried. Key messages. Key messages. Are you putting that on the screen or what, Sabrina? Sorry,
So
I'm
our
not
key
rushing you.
messages are in draft. The ones that just have the yellow are things I had nothing to add from our agenda. Certainly, if you have something, we can pop them in. So I have nothing from the vibrant spaces. And then we did have the one service excellence. If there's anything else you want, though, I will certainly work on getting those drafted for you.
I've been jotting down notes from today's meeting. And I wondered if there might be a reference to the presentation that Mary just gave us about outreach. And that from the board's perspective, at least part of that will help us with our strategic planning and ensure wide community input when we get to the consultation process, or help ensure.
I have that down. Thank you.
I jotted down under communication and planning that, some things from the action plan, that we have meetings scheduled with, the mayor, the deputy, et cetera, to talk about shared town BMPL priorities. That we're planning a town hall in the summer, focusing on the annual report. That the board will be having a special meeting in April to identify key supporters and developing communication plan. And I thought under your service excellence, you might add the library's assisting with registering for the vaccination.
And should we also add in there the tax?
Sure.
Tax clinic as well.
Be very careful how you say that, because
The tax clinic, there's
No,
actually verbiage that CRA gives us on what we can and cannot even say. So I will certainly
sure,
use the
yeah.
CRA's statements.
yeah, okay, just so that somebody's not coming in and dumping a whole pile of tax receipts on your desk and saying, here, prepare my return, you know.
No, and in those are the ones that are not considered by the CRA for volunteers. It is what they refer to as a simple tax return. And they give very
Okay.
clear criteria to the volunteers on what they can accept.
Well, having just done our tax returns, I'll leave in your good hands. Let's put it that
Yes,
way.
mine is not a simple tax return, but my sons would be, right? Or, my
Yes,
children,
yes.
or someone who doesn't have a lot of assets and moving parts.
Right, okay. Thank you, Laurie. That was a good point. I was going to mention about the outreach program. Anyone else got any other items they would like to mention, Gary or Jesse?
No, nothing else?
Oh, I'm sorry, your screen lit up. Okay, we've got your key messages. Okay, Sabrina, you're organized there.
Yes.
Can I have someone move that this board approve the release of those key messages as suggested?
So moved.
Well, I hear one mover and one seconder. I'm not sure who. Jesse moved, no, not Jesse. Laurie moved and Rob, I think, seconded. All in favor? Carried. Right, yeah. Okay. Just as noted in the bottom of the agenda, the next regular meeting is May 20th. The regular meeting at May 20th at 2 o'clock. But our meeting on April 15th will be a closed session. Anything else anyone would like to say before I adjourn this meeting? Laurie?
Just a question, in terms of our closed meeting in April, is there stuff we need to prepare or think about individually in advance, or will there be any information coming out to us saying, think about this?
There will be some information, hopefully in about a week, that I'll be sending out with just some thinking points. And then from there, that will help to craft the agenda, and I'll have it out at the regular timeline.
Good, good. Anyone else? It's now 3:21. I now declare this meeting adjourned.